You are still trying to work with a tooth that pulses up into your eye, so everything gets broken into little pauses. Lift, carry, stop. Press the hot cloth to your cheek. Wait for the heat to bite through the skin. Spit. Try again. You stop chewing on that side first, then stop chewing much at all, because even soft bread turns into work once your jaw went close cleanly. At night you keep shifting your head on the bedding, looking for one position that does not send a stab up behind the eye. And by the time light comes back in, you have not really slept. Once your face starts to swell, it stops being something you can hide by keeping your mouth shut. People look at you, then look again. Somebody gets more cloths warming by the hearth. Somebody else crushes herbs, pours out vinegar, says to rinse. Spit. Rinse again. There is always one person with a firmer suggestion than the last. Hold the heat longer. Drink this. Don't drink that. Pray now. Try stronger drink. Take broth instead of meat. So the room turns damp and sour and smoky, and you go along with all of it because these are things done at home, with hands and cups and fire, not with iron near your mouth. For a little while it seems to listen. The heat loosens it just enough that the pressure drops from a roar to a hard throb. You can sit up without wincing every few breaths. You manage some broth in careful sips, keeping it to the cooler side, and everybody around you starts acting half useful, half hopeful again. That is the dangerous stretch, really. You begin to think one more night might settle it. Nobody has to send for anyone. Nobody has to hold you still. Then morning makes the choice uglier. The swelling is firmer now, pushing lower into the jaw, and swallowing has turned slow and deliberate, like your own throat has become something you have to persuade. Your mouth tastes bad before you even try to eat, and your breath gives it away when you speak. So now the same household remedies that felt sensible yesterday start to look like stalling. People stop offering them with confidence and start offering them like excuses, and the talk shifts to who should be called in, and whether you trust another poultice, the local healer, or somebody whose answer is likely to hurt the moment he opens his bag. People end up right in your space once the talk turns serious. One person presses your cheek with 2 fingers, another wants to see the gum, somebody else tells you not to let anyone touch it at all, and every suggestion arrives like it is the obvious one. Pull it. Lance it. Bleed first. Wait till morning. You cannot do all of that. And nobody offering advice is volunteering their own coin or their own jaw if it goes wrong. So the room starts sorting people by the only thing that feels solid. Not who sounds learned, but who has a name attached to a body still walking around. Somebody says a man nearby took a tooth from her brother and the swelling went down. Somebody else cuts in that he charges too much unless you pay half later. Then another person asks the part that matters most now. Does he finish, or does he poke around, leave you split open, and go? Once that gets answered, a boy is sent off before anyone can start the argument over again. That settles people for a minute. As soon as a name is chosen, hands need jobs. Cloths get folded. Water goes near the fire. A basin is found and wiped out with whatever clean corner there is. Someone checks what can be paid now and what has to be promised, and those promises get said carefully because everybody in the room may have to remember them later. You are still hurting, but now the household has the busy quiet that comes when fear has been turned into preparation. Then the bag is expected, and that changes the feeling again. It is one thing to moan and hold your face and say help is coming. It is another to make space on the bench, clear the table, and realize you are being arranged for something. Once the cloths and water and basin are there, waiting is over in practice even before anyone arrives. And when the tools finally come out, you still have to decide whether you will sit still and let the tooth come. Let him open a vein first, or pull away and keep the swelling you already know is getting worse. Once the tools are laid out where you can see them, people stop talking to you like you still have a choice. One person moves behind your shoulders. Another takes your forehead or jaw to keep your head from jerking. If there is a drink, you take it because refusing it now just makes you look difficult. And if they wad cloth for your mouth, you bite down because your hands already know they need something to do. The worst part is the little pause before he starts, when everyone has gotten into position and no one wants to be the one to say, "Go on." Then the tool goes in, or the blade does, and the whole bench turns into a thing you are trying not to leave. You grab wood, sleeve somebody's wrist, whatever is there. There is a hard cracking sound close inside your own face, then a wet spill into the basin. If it is a tooth, they will usually show it for a second, black at the root, or stinking enough that nobody has to pretend the trouble was small. The change comes fast enough to confuse people. You are still crying out or shaking, but the packed, bursting pressure that had been pushing through your cheeks suddenly drops away. You can open your mouth a little more. Swallowing stops feeling like forcing food past a stone. The room loosens with you. Even the helpers let go in stages, like they do not quite trust the pain to stay changed. Then they have to deal with what they just made. More cloth goes to the mouth, not the floor. Someone tells you not to spit so much, or not to touch the place with your tongue, which of course you do immediately. The bleeding has to slow. The empty place has to stay clean enough not to turn worse by evening. And once the rush of it passes, your whole body starts trembling from the shock, weak and sweaty, while everybody watches to see whether the night brings sleep at last or fever again. By evening, the worst of the pounding is gone, but you are no use to yourself. You try to get up and your knees go soft, so somebody catches your elbow and sits you back down. Your mouth keeps leaking into the cloth even when the bleeding has mostly slowed, and every taste feels suspicious now. Iron, salt, something sour, maybe nothing at all except fear. So the whole business changes. Nobody is hunting for a cure anymore. They are keeping you warm, swapping out stiff cloths, blowing on broth so you can sip it without flinching, and taking away anything you might try to chew out of impatience. The room settles into little checks. A hand on your forehead, a look at the bandage. Somebody asking if the swelling feels lower or only different. If you doze for a short stretch, everyone eases a little. If you wake and spit pink again, the talk starts over at once. The awkward part is that half the signs look almost the same when things are improving and when they are turning bad. Heat, wet cloth, bad taste, no appetite. You can argue over any of it while standing right there with the basin. It goes like that with other wounds too. A cut or puncture can sit under a wrapping for a bit and seem tolerable. Then the cloth comes off and the whole look of it is changed. The skin is tighter, redder, hotter, and the stain on the bandage is thicker and darker than yesterday. At that point, waiting stops looking sensible. Someone loosens it fully, washes it, presses around it, and if that does not bring anything out, the place may be opened further or probed, which is a miserable thing to sit still for when it was already hurting enough. And then, annoyingly, it can look better almost at once. Fluid runs, the tight skin slackens a little, the pressure eases, and everybody in the room acts as if the ugly part proved itself. For a few hours that is enough. But now the wound is open on purpose. The dressings have to be changed again and again, and each change brings the same pause before anyone speaks. The sniff, the look, the question about heat, and whether you are strong enough for this to keep going tomorrow. Just when the swelling finally looks less angry, somebody decides not to trust it. They hold up the urine, squint at it near the light, press your wrist, look at your tongue. Notice you have stopped asking for food, and the whole room shifts tone. Now the talk is not about the sore place draining well enough. Now it is about what is still sitting in the body, what must be let out, what has to be thinned, emptied, reduced before it settles deeper. So you let them do it, mostly because the logic is hard to argue with when everyone can see something leaving. Blood in the bowl looks like action. A purge in the pot looks like action. People like action when they are frightened. They can point to the cloth, the basin, the mess carried away, and say yes. There that was needed. You may even believe it for a minute, even while your hands go cold and getting upright starts taking planning. And if the fever eases that evening, or you fall asleep from sheer exhaustion and stay asleep longer than before, that is enough to make the treatment seem right. The room gets calmer. Voices drop. Someone finally eats. Someone says you look easier. But then you wake hollowed out. The pain may be less sharp, yet your legs feel unreliable, your teeth chatter under blankets, and even broth can turn your stomach if it comes too fast. That is when the awkward part starts. People stop asking only whether the bad place is draining and start watching everything small. Whether you can keep down a sip, whether your fingers stay warm, whether your face brightens or sinks after being sat up. And hanging over all of it is the next suggestion. Just a little more, someone says. One more drawing off, one more clearing out. By then the question is no longer what can be done to you. It is how to tell when your body has had enough of useful-looking help. Days later, getting better is mostly a matter of not being foolish. You sit up slowly first, wait for the room to stay put, then try a little broth or softened bread and see if it sits well. Your hand keeps going back to the sore place almost on its own, checking whether it still feels tight, hot, or newly swollen. If the cloth at the bandage smells wrong, people notice. If it stays clean a little longer than yesterday, that counts as good news and nobody says it too loudly. So your day fills up with these small guarded choices. Eat while food sounds possible, because an hour later it may not. Sleep while the fire is still warm, because a cold night can leave you shivering and aching by morning. Don't tug at the dressing just to see how it looks. Don't walk farther than the yard if standing has already made your knees go weak. Healthy people barely think about this kind of thing, but once you have been dragged through pain and treatment both, you start measuring everything by whether it might set you back before dark. You also listen differently. Someone mentions a neighbor who waited until the swelling reached the eye. Someone else says a man was open too soon and never seemed strong after. Those stories stick, because now you know what relief actually feels like, and you know the price that can come after it. The drained face, the trembling hands, the appetite that disappears just when everyone says you ought to rebuild your strength. So you keep your blanket close, eat when you can, watch stains and smells, and store away every tiny sign your body gives you. That is about as much advantage as surviving once gives you. The next time a tooth starts throbbing, or a wound turns foul, or fever comes on by evening, you are not calm. You are just quicker to notice the dangerous turn, and no surer what to do with it. Call for help early, and you may be handing yourself over to something harsh before you had to. Wait, and you may again be sitting there bargaining with pain until the cure looks nearly as frightening as the sickness.